In this final lesson of the module, we'll delve into essential elements of establishing norms and setting clear expectations for the mentorship relationship and how to capture these in a mentoring agreement. Plus, we'll explore how to craft a realistic work plan for each phase of your mentoring journey. Discussing norms and expectations for the mentoring relationship paves the way for a smooth and successful mentoring experience. These norms are the shared guide for all interactions, from in-person meetings to email communication. These norms serve as a framework that guides interactions and communication. Developing norms in mentorship relationships fosters a positive and productive dynamic between mentors and mentees. As part of the course resources and the Advancing Field Safety Toolkit, we are providing examples of mentorship norms and templates for these conversations. Norms and expectations should be customized as they vary based on the nature of the mentorship and the individuals involved, but could include agreements around communication and feedback, numbers of meetings, respect for time, setting boundaries, and accessibility considerations. These norms might also include the duration of the mentorship commitment. In a field setting, norms could also be defined as guidelines for the entire field team. A set of mentorship norms could look like this: maintain regular and open communication, be an active listener, reserve judgment, and consider differing perspectives, engage in constructive feedback, respect each other's perspectives, experiences, and boundaries, maintain a professional demeanor in interactions, be flexible, be open and adaptable, create a relationship that fosters independence, growth, and mutual respect, and presume good intent. We recommend using the oops and ouch method. That means that if you recognize that you've said something hurtful or problematic, acknowledge it with an oops and then try again. If someone else says something harmful or problematic, express ouch to signal that further discussion is necessary. Let's talk through one example using the norm, create a relationship that fosters independence, growth, and mutual respect. In all mentoring relationships, one goal is for mentees to build their own skills. Part of this includes learning how to balance asking for help and trying some independent problem solving. So for example, instead of just saying that the 3D camera that captures the field site location doesn't work, the mentee could troubleshoot independently first and communicate about their attempts. They could then, for example, say that the batteries of the 3D camera lose charge after just 5 minutes of use when it's cold outside, and that they try to use hand warmers or preheat the battery, independent problem solving, and then ask for advice on what else to try, asking for help. Establishing a norm for independent problem solving transfers agency to the mentee and sets them up for success, and it also makes it easier to support them as a mentor. However, it's also important to establish that in some situations, especially in field settings when safety may be at stake, asking for help immediately may be necessary instead of problem solving independently. As part of this conversation, you may also want to discuss the goals and expectations for the mentoring relationship. Depending on the context, the mentee can share what they are hoping to achieve through their research, their degree program, or during the field campaign. Establish the specific goals of this mentorship relationship together and recognize that those are a mix of career goals, like completing a degree, research goals, like defining a sampling strategies, and personal goals, like experiencing the Arctic for the first time. This conversation is also a space to discuss strengths and weaknesses. You could ask a mentee about their self-perceived strengths and areas where they need and want guidance. As part of this conversation, the mentor should also acknowledge their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, the mentor may say, "I don't think clearly when I'm tired and hungry, so let's do our daily field debrief after dinner." This sets the foundation for collaborative and constructive partnership. As part of this conversation, also discuss communication preferences, meeting schedules, and how feedback will be given and received. A mentor might identify others who can provide complementary support, and they can discuss any accommodations that are needed. As you work through these norms and expectations, remember that your relationship may have an inherent power dynamic, and that given this, mentees may not be comfortable responding honestly. For example, if you are discussing schedules, asking how late are you willing to work while in the field could pressure mentees to suggest much longer workdays than they are actually comfortable with. So instead, ask the mentee to describe their ideal workday in the field. When they outline the workday, they are more likely to describe that the ideal workday ends after a certain number of hours in the field. The mentor can then also describe the needs of the research project. It might be that a field campaign requires 10-hour field days. Knowing the needs and preferences allows both sides to establish a plan that meets the project needs and also sets boundaries. Remember, these expectations, goals, and preferences can evolve, so revisit them from time to time. A helpful way to capture and formalize these norms and expectations is a mentorship agreement. A mentorship agreement serves as a roadmap. It outlines the norms and expectations of both the mentor and mentee. A mentorship agreement also establishes boundaries and is a guide to refer back to if challenges arise. We are providing templates and samples of mentorship agreements along with this lesson. Even if you have been working together for a while, it's not too late to set up a mentorship agreement. You can use that discussion to revisit expectations and norms. Before deploying for a field campaign, it's valuable to revisit and update the mentorship agreement together and make it specific to the field situation.
Setting expectations and norms and goals are just hugely important. One, they build trust between you and your mentee. You want to sort of be someone who practices what they preach, and I think that is a really important part of the dynamic that leads to successful fieldwork and successful relationships in labs. Mentorship agreements kind of need to be done only if they're taken very seriously and there's sort of a systematic way to follow up and have accountability with them. Sort of co-creating a mentorship agreement with your trainee can be really valuable. I think because there's sort of ownership on both parts about the agreement that's being made. But I think one thing that needs to be considered is that needs to be sort of updated and revised over time, because when a trainee comes into graduate school, for instance, right, you don't really know what to expect. And it's only when you come across issues that you realize sort of what you actually need. I think a lot of times for scientists, like, time is tight, right? We don't have a lot of time to be devoting to annual revisions of these mentorship agreements, but if they are really important and you do value them, I think that time needs to be made to continually address that and revise.
Work plans are important mentoring tools, especially for early career scientists. A work plan provides a helpful structure and is valuable in supporting the mentee, keeping in mind the big picture, focusing on the objectives of the research project, and defining realistic milestones to achieve the goals within the available time. A work plan with clear milestones is also a reality check of the feasibility of the timeline and allows for check-ins and reflection at critical points in the project and throughout the field campaign. These check-ins allow for course correction if needed. For example, is a sampling approach providing relevant results? Do we need to adjust the methodology? And it helps to define the next steps. Work plans are particularly important for field settings. Developing a work plan provides transparency and is a helpful planning tool to map out the field campaign goals, timeline, data collection, fieldwork details, and responsibilities. Work plans are not static, they are living documents. Maintaining open communication and flexibility is important to adapt the milestones as necessary, especially during fieldwork. When setting up the work plan, it's important to consider the psychology of learning. This graphic illustrates the different learning zones. The stretch zone is where maximum learning occurs, but it also shows that we are not learning very much when we are in our comfort zone, and instead should try moving into discomfort and pushing the boundaries to maximize our learning. However, the panic zone is similarly unproductive. The panic zone is not the place we want to be. This graphic can be used as a tool to provide some useful terminology to the work experience and can be used to open a conversation about the reality that if a mentee presses themselves too far and moves into the panic zone, then adjustments need to be made. For example, when in a field situation, an intensive data collection period might require intensive and long days. If you identify this data collection push as the stretch zone, it gives the mentee and the whole team a way to check back and ask for assistance. If you identify it as the panic zone, you can establish support and resources before it begins. Making a work plan in advance can allow everyone to discuss what to do if anyone or the whole team enters the panic zone. During reflections and at milestone check-ins, discuss what worked well and what could be improved. Remind your mentee that failures in research are part of the process and include space for these challenges and failures. Such reflections set the stage for continued growth and allow to identify support needs or course correction in field situations. At the same time, don't forget to celebrate achievements. A document that supplements a mentorship agreement and a work plan is an individual development plan, or IDP. IDPs are usually developed by the mentee to give them agency over their own development and to map out career goals, areas for improvement, and actionable steps to achieve those objectives. Individual development plans can act as the roadmap for both mentors and mentees to collaboratively identify and address needs. It's important when drafting an IDP to set realistic and measurable goals, establish timelines, and identify strategies for acquiring the necessary skills and experiences. The individual development plan serves as a dynamic document that evolves as the mentee's career progresses. It should be adjusted and updated to reflect progress, as well as changing circumstances or changing priority. In this final lesson, we've pulled together everything we've learned about inclusive mentoring, and we've introduced 3 documents that help you navigate your mentoring journey.